Up, 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 up. They're not going down, down, down. UTIs are going up, up, and away. The problem is with UTIs, they're not just going up, they're going chronically crazy, where women are suffering incredible suffering. We're talking about devastating suffering because of UTIs. Chronic UTIs that don't want to go anywhere because guess what? The bacteria became super bacteria. It is now a super bug. That's what's happening. So many people are dealing with chronic UTIs. They can't get past them. They can't move forward. It's just tormenting them and it doesn't go away. Same thing with pelvic inflammatory disease. That too just keeps on tormenting women in such ways that is undescribable because words don't match the suffering they are suffering with. So we're going into that. UTI, bladder infections, kidney infections, right? Urinary tract infections, yeast infections. Interesting. Yeast. So the funny thing about, well, it's nothing funny about it, but the funny thing about yeast infections is the yeast is not the real problem. It is bacteria that's underneath it all. The yeast, just the immune system is so challenged in that area that the yeast just grows because it's growing because there's so much of an immune suppressive situation happening in the bladder area, the vaginal area, all of that the yeast just tends to explode, but it's exploding because the bacteria is thriving and taking over. We're talking about strep, we're talking about bacteria, we're talking about superbugs a little bit. We're going into that, and we're talking about UTIs. We're going to talk about solutions for UTIs as well. So that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people that are dealing with UTIs. You don't want to miss this episode. This is an important one. I'm even reading a little bit out of Liver Rescue, a little bit out of Cleanse to Heal. Don't miss this. Do you know anybody struggling or suffering with UTIs or have a history of UTIs and now they have acne? Now they got SIBO. Years later, they get SIBO. Now they get PID. Now they got acne again. Then they got an ear infection. Then they got a sore throat and a strep throat problem. Yeah, exactly. Strep. Exactly. SIBO. They never talk about what bacteria it is that creates small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, but it's strep. Our good old friend strep. Hey strep, how are you? Fine. Doing okay. Living in everybody's lymphatic vessels, living in everybody's pores, living in everybody's throats, living in everybody's butts. Yep, you got it. That's what happens. Strep is always hanging around people's anuses. It's hanging around their rectums all the time. That's where strep loves to be. It's around everybody's throat. It's in their mouth every day. People have more than one variety, two variety. They'll have 3 variety, 4 variety, 5 variety, 6 variety, 7 variety. They'll have 10 varieties of strep. Some dormant, some low key, some much more serious, creating everything from acne to styes. Yep, styes, thrush, all that thrush on their tongue, just causing problems. So that's the whole thing there. We're going into strep and we're going into UTIs. But let's hit the UTI problem because that is critical because I'm seeing it more and more. Years ago, I didn't see it like it was today. You'd have that antibiotic resistant UTI. You'd have that out there. I saw it out there. Okay. But now it's unlike it's ever been. It's never been to this degree. I called it though, and I saw it. I've written about it, that these bugs would actually take off to such a degree where they'd be antibiotic resistant, but not just MRSA. I'm not talking about MRSA. I'm talking about plain old Jane strep, not MRSA. The patient has the superbug, whether it's a male, female, the patient has a superbug, and then the patient has a relationship, or the patient is a chef working in a restaurant who cuts their finger and then bleeds on 3 different meals that you can't really tell because a lot of the chefs, they wear the black gloves. They put the black gloves on. They throw a bandage on, put a black glove on. There's still blood everywhere, and they get working really quick. They wipe their hands. or it's a relationship, sexual interactions of some kind, and then that superbug now gets transferred onto someone else with all this information and all this messaging, and that information, or the shopping cart. Shopping cart's a big one. I've been saying this for decades. You guys heard me say it years ago, before C came around. The shopping cart is a big one, okay? Lots of different bacteria on there, lots of strep, lots of staph, lots of C. diff, lots of MRSA, lots of other stuff too. But the strep is just crazy on the shopping cart handles. Crazy. That's how much is on there, okay? So with that, if they did a swab in a petri dish, if they did that, like off the shopping cart handles, you wouldn't believe what would grow. You wouldn't believe it. So you're sitting there with a shopping cart handle. You're not using handy wipes. You're not doing an alcohol handy wipe across the handle. You're not thinking about anything. You don't care about anything. Maybe you're just somebody that thinks that your immune system will get stronger because of it, and you won't have to worry because, hey, who cares? I can just eat bugs and have bugs all over my skin. It's just all that whole thing, that philosophy, right? It makes you stronger. You become immune to it or something like that. That's not true. That's not how it works. The more exposure you get to these bugs, the more exposure you get, the more bugs you get, the more problems you have. And then it doesn't work that way where we're just all of a sudden, hey, I'm immune to everything and that's what I want, all these bugs. No, it does not work like that. Tell that to someone who got, herpes simplex 2. Tell that to someone who's got something else that they caught from somebody. It doesn't make you stronger. It's not how it works. It's a hassle. It's all a hassle. So then that strep, then that superbug gets into somebody else through a shopping cart handle, through a public bathroom, off the toilet seat, off the dispenser, whatever it is, and they get it. And they get the bug that's super powered. It is a super version of itself. It already knows all the antibiotics. It already knows about them all. That means when you come down with something, or you get sick, or something happens, and now you got a UTI, whatever it may be, you go to the doctor, and the process starts all over again, but the doctor starts giving you that first round of antibiotics, and it won't budge so easy. Especially if you have a compromised immune system and you're already struggling with something. It won't budge. And they're just like, why do you have these UTIs all of a sudden? Or say, someone has sex with somebody else and, is unprotected. Even if it's protected sex, it's still easy to transfer these streps and this bacteria. And all of a sudden now there's a new UTI somebody has that never had before. And now, but it's an anti-resistant, antibiotic resistant is what I mean, version of itself that has all this information, that's coded, that's got all this intel, that survived all these antibiotics, that knows them well. So now we have another person with a super bug, and just as grim as this sounds, it's not grim when you know how to heal and use tools. And that's the thing about medical medium information. It's the one place where people that are the sickest come to find answers, and it's not all that biohack bullshit out there that's going on. It's real. It's the real deal. It's real answers, real information on how to heal, what to do, and that's medical medium information, and that's how it's always been. People can be jealous out there, and they can rip it apart or say what they want about it. It shows the most people healed in the world, the most chronic conditions, and this is why. Knowing about this information, not just biohacking crap on social and just this, and try this. It's for people who have been there and done that. They're seasoned and they know. So what happens is there is hope. So when these superbugs, this super strep, gets to somebody else and they're fighting battling these UTIs, and it seems hopeless. There are women out there with chronic UTIs every day of their lives, going into overactive bladder, going into chronic UTIs, overactive bladder, pain in their kidneys, pain in their back, PID, and then it tack on acne and sore throats and SIBO, because they all get a SIBO diagnosis eventually. Tack on to all those in there, and they're living with these super bug streps. It's happening more and more out there, and there are more people living with this than ever before. Now there is an upsurge that's getting out of control, a serious upsurge, and that upsurge is not going to stop. It's going to keep on going unless people know how to arm themselves and take care of themselves and know how to fight. feed their bodies what they need, do the right things, giving their bodies what they need so they can beat this superbug stuff down, because it's no joke right now, because people are passing these along and it's out of control. People need the right information. There's Cleanse to Heal right here in front of me, and in Cleanse to Heal, it got pelvic inflammatory disease, right? And even, PID, right? And even prostatitis, got that there too. And I'm talking about bladder infections, UTIs, all of that in here. So it's Cleanse to Heal. People need this book. They need the information. Strep is not and never was a superbug in the past. So strep was never a superbug. It's not designed to be a superbug originally. It was never meant to be one. We are forcing it to become a superbug. Okay? It's much more forgiving, strep, than anything else was. Okay, in its original state, going back many years ago, it was much more forgiving. It's a forgiving bacterium. It's not as unforgiving as MRSA. It's not as unforgiving as MRSA. So that is something to understand. C. diff and MRSA can be even much more brutal of a superbug. Strep, still, even with its worst superbug mentality, whatever, its worst superbug creation, it doesn't hold the power as like MRSA and what MRSA can turn into. Some kind of flesh-eating bacterium that just becomes a super bug. So I want that clear so people know. So if they got strep and they're living with strep, they're living with all these symptoms, you can turn it in. It can turn naturally into a superbug over time because it's force-fed the antibiotics. It's force-fed in the way I was saying, all those things, but it won't get to like a MRSA level at MRSA's worst. So the different varieties of MRSA, there's all these different varieties of MRSA. Did you know there's thousands of varieties of MRSA? And some of the top tier varieties of MRSA that are just like god awful, and they kill people is what they do, and they give them sepsis and then they die. They're like the top tier of the worst. Strep's not there, so I wanted that to be clear. But strep is no longer one strain. I want to go back to that a little bit. It's no longer one strain. There are so many varieties of strep at this point. Over the decades, strep being a victim of antibiotics, it found a way to survive, to adapt. Adaptation didn't just mean getting stronger. It meant mutating and spawning different strains and varieties, and that's what strep does. It's the ultimate like spawner of new varieties of bacteria. All strep, all the same family, but it's the ultimate. Anna says over there on IG, I healed my UTI back in 2002 with the herbs and supplements you recommend in Cleanse to Heal book. Amazing. Is it 2020? That's what it is. Healing with Victoria. I used to be on an antibiotic once a month for UTIs. I haven't needed them in 4 years thanks to your protocols, thanks to you and SOC. Because medical meme information destroys UTIs. Just destroys them. So one thing about Info, if you know how to use it and you use it right, you can annihilate so many different strep conditions. Shamrock over there on IG, this was me with IC. Whoa, IC. For 20 years of extreme bladder pain until I found medical meme information. Thank you, AW. Incredible. Incredible. Over here, Heidi on IG. Before medical medium, I had chronic strep throat, UTIs, and kidney infections. I now have no pain and haven't had to run to the doctor in many years. This info works. Quote from you. Amazing. And I will add to that quote from you. It does work. It does work. It does. Maria over there on YouTube. Great topic. I used to get UTIs. Oh, I saw that one already. Great. Chrissy over there. And I think Stitch. Chrissy, I was in tears every time I had a UTI. I can't imagine the amount of people that are going through it. And they go through it on levels that are just devastating. It's become like the superbug now level. And it's brutal. and so many people suffer from it. Their guts get ripped to shreds from all the antibiotics they have to take. They're on steroids almost all the time, and it's brutal.